Welcome to Mimir, the podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs who want to launch and grow a successful business from day one. I'm your host, Maddie Kelly, and each week I sit down with founders who have been there, done that. We dive into the mindset, strategies, and practical tools you need to turn your vision into a reality. So let's get to work. Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. As a founder, you'll inevitably hit the point where you realize you can't do this alone. Maybe your customer base has outgrown you. Maybe you need expertise beyond your own. Either way, what comes after that realization is often daunting. So I'm sitting down with Emily Bronaugh, the founder of Upwork, to unpack why hiring feels so hard, why we avoid it, and why scaling a business isn't about increasing revenue, it's about leadership. But this isn't another checklist about job descriptions or Upwork hacks. We talk about trust, control, and rethinking what it means to be a boss. Emily didn't set out to become a leadership expert. She simply wanted to build a business while raising her son. But along the way, she saw a pattern. Founders like her weren't just struggling to find help, they were struggling actually to let go. I think this is because hiring brings up questions we don't always talk about, like, can I really trust somebody else with this thing I built from scratch? What does it mean to empower, not micromanage? How do I become the kind of leader I wish I had? Emily and I get into all of it. How to create space, articulate expectations, and relinquish control in a way that feels intentional. We discuss modern leadership and how it's about more than climbing a ladder. It's about building human-to-human relationships where trust, empathy, and shared purpose come first. I hope this conversation reaches the founders who know their business can't grow unless they grow too, and the founders who want to build more than a company, but a culture that lasts beyond them. As early founders, leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's just about creating the conditions for others to thrive. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Emily to the podcast. Hey, Emily, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Me too. We off air really really over our love of entrepreneurship. So I would kind of love for you to just briefly share your story and what led you to start your business. How'd you get here?
Sure. So I am a mom and trying to keep the story short and sweet. Basically, my husband was deploying a lot when my son was an infant and really little, and he's in the Air Force. And so I really struggled with balancing the needs that my son had with having a full-time job. I've always been very career-minded. I've always been very ambitious as well. So I really struggled with that balance. And so I found life coaching, I found online business, and through all of that, started to really see how entrepreneurship could be an option for me. And through various masterminds and different courses, that sort of thing, I was also simultaneously seeing a lot of women specifically, I was noticing had this question of, okay, I'm getting told that I need to hire as soon as possible, that as soon as I can afford a VA, I need to get one, but how do I hire someone? Or where do I go? Or once I've hired the person, then what do I do with them? And so I was noticing both sides of this leadership journey, being a leader where you want to create a good work environment for people. And then on the flip side, the logistics of being a leader. So that's how Upwork came to be, to kind of fill that gap. So now I just help women gain the confidence to hire and create places worthy of people's time.
I think your journey also, obviously I want to dive so much more deeply into all of that, but your story in particular, I think so many women experience, even at my 9-to-5 job, my manager talks about that struggle for her. She has 2 kids. And I think as women entrepreneurs and women in general, this is an important topic for us. And how do you balance work and being a mom? I think it's a struggle. And I know a lot of women struggle with the guilt of that. And I would love to just hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, it's so the way that I kind of frame it, it being this issue of not feeling like we can have balance, not feeling like our personal lives matter, feeling just the question of everybody else seems to be able to be at work from 8 to 5 p.m. and then only have an hour or two with their kid in the evenings, and they're just fine with it and they're going along with it and nobody's complaining. Like
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. But I frame it as this kind of, not to get like too in the weeds of like the history of work and all that stuff, but we really still come from this very 80s, very masculine kind of structure and framework around what leadership means and what work means. There's so much like morality around work and whether or not you're a good person, that sort of thing, depending on what type of work you have. And it all kind of stems from women needing to show up in a competitive way alongside men in a way that because of AI, because of COVID, because of all these things, we're seeing this conflict now where that's not working for us anymore. And our tolerance for it is really decreasing. But there's not, with that decrease in tolerance, I have not seen anything filling that gap, that education gap of, okay, well, then what do we do? Like if we're not going to go with this hyper masculine, like outdated way of managing and leading people, then what are we to do? So we're where we are now, which is just kind of everybody's throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying to figure it out. Nobody knows what they're doing. And it's a storm out there. It's like the Wild West.
Yeah. Well, no, this is so fascinating because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about this in particular. Like, I see such polarization online where it's either like women are now being told you're not meant to work, it's not how we're designed, and like women shouldn't work. And I get what they're saying, and like I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I personally love my job. I love to work. I need to have something that's like purposeful and fulfilling outside of just like my girl jobs at home. And like I love providing for my boyfriend. That is truly like a fulfilling thing for me as well. But I know myself, like even if I wasn't to have a 9 to 5 job and he were to fully provide for me, like I would start a business, like period. Like that's just who I am. And that's a part of me that I absolutely relish in and I love. And so like I would love for you to double click into this a little bit, because from another woman who's also like driven and super ambitious, like to hear you talking about this space, I think is really refreshing. And like, I would just love to hear your thoughts on that, because I think there's such opposite ends of the spectrum. And like to say that there is a shift happening and like to understand it from a different angle, I just think is a really important topic.
Yeah, I agree. I am, like I said, I'm a mom, but I only have one kid, and he was in daycare from the minute he could go to daycare. And it's
Yeah.
not because I don't love him. It's because that I have a lot of goals, and I did not feel like I did not feel I that is not a skill set of mine. It is not raising children in that way. There are some people who just have that gift, and that is not mine. And so totally get where you're coming from. I also love the feeling of contributing. I think what's so fascinating though is that, so I follow a lot of different organizational psychologists, and Adam Grant is one that a lot of people know, and Brené Brown kind of dabbles in, you could consider her one as well. But all of their research points to the idea that the things that women are naturally good at, which is connection, which is giving people the benefit of the doubt, community building, those sorts of things that we label as more feminine traits, are actually psychologically what motivates us more than kind of more like more traditional, hard-nosed, like ways of doing things that we all grew up with, and like ways of seeing work on the TV that we all would watch, all of the things, the stereotypes about work, right? So it's fascinating that the science is kind of matching what our intuition has been over the last few years, which is that something's off here and we're not doing this well.
Yeah.
And we need to come up with some different solutions. And so I really am passionate about, like I was saying a second ago, filling that information gap, because it's not that it has to be one or the other. It's not that there has to be like, well, women either stay at home or they're
Yes.
equal to men and behave like men. They just have longer hair. It doesn't
Yeah,
have
like
to be either of those.
yeah, like the narrative now is like either you are in your feminine, which means that you stay at home,
Yeah.
or you are in your masculine and you have a career. There's no balance there where it's like, how do women entrepreneurs maintain their feminine side while still having a business and like contributing in that way?
Yeah, first, yeah. And that's so funny. My like go-to saying, I need to like get it tattooed or something, is just that there is always a solution. Opportunities always exist. They always
Mm-hmm.
exist. So like, I try in most aspects of my life to not be someone where it's black or white or either or. That's something that I'm constantly working on. And so finding that balance of like, I can lead and I can be a visionary and have this road that I want to go down, whether it's because I want to impact a ton of people or because I want to have financial independence or whatever it is. But I can bring people along with me in a way that is collaborative, in a way that says, hey, you have the same mission, come with me. I
Yeah.
am not good at social media. I'm not good at copywriting, or I'm not good at creating whatever. I know you can do that better than I can. So come with me, rather than this like boss mentality of, I am in control over you somehow, or
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing and you don't, or my time is more valuable than yours. Those are all outdated mindsets. I think that even people with the best of intentions, I've worked with so many entrepreneurs who are the most kind-hearted, like have the best intentions, but those old beliefs and like patterns of thinking are still there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work anymore.
No, it's so funny that you brought that up. I was literally just talking to my coworker about this. We went to have coffee, and like something we were chatting about was this idea that in life in general and in the workplace, it's tricky because you don't want to have hierarchies in your like person to person relationships, right? Like you think about your best friends, and those are all like very equal footing. Like you guys are the same. There's no element of control. Nobody is better than somebody else, and like that dynamic doesn't exist in those types of relationships. And in theory, those should also exist in the workplace. Like exactly what you said. It's like your boss should come to you still from like a human perspective. It's not that they think that they're better than you because they have a technically like higher position than you on the corporate ladder. It's like you still have to interact as a human being. And I think that idea of like those kinds of leaders where it's very fostering, and it's like, you know, how can I as a leader empower you to be your best self, like either here or somewhere else in the rest of your journey of a career, is like where we're starting to go.
Yeah, and I think people are demanding it. So you know, how many times do we hear like people complaining about Gen Z because they don't put up with it? Like it's
Yeah.
not, this is like, it's not even a, like, I think a lot of people, especially our age and older, are like, oh yeah, in an ideal world, of course that's how we would act, but it's not in an ideal world. And I think like reality is going to come hit us in the face sooner rather than later, because we've got an entire generation coming behind us. Oh, I'm a millennial, that's why I say behind us, but like we've got an entire generation of people coming up behind us that are like, no, we're not doing it that way. So you need to figure out how to do it in a
Which
way
is
where
great.
we are motivated. Yeah. So we've got a short amount of time where we've got to get our act together, is kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. And like, I think that the beauty of also being an entrepreneur is you kind of get to like set these rules for yourself, right? Like that's part of the reason why you start your own companies. You're like, I don't like what's going on out there, so I want to do it myself and I want to do it better. So my question then for you is like, you've worked with so many founders, and I'm curious, like, what do you think, like, why? I mean, I know why, but like, I'd love for you to tell the people why the hiring process like is so daunting. And then I think from there, we'll kind of get into like the tactical like guide that you have to help people get through this process.
Yeah, I think what you just said about like entrepreneurship, a lot of us get into this because we had a bad experience with a boss. We don't fit our lifestyle doesn't fit in the
Mhm.
typical 9 to 5, and so we can create it's like choose your own journey kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that gets incredibly overwhelming for people when you didn't start your business to be a leader. You didn't start your
Yes.
business to know how to be a manager. You started your business because there's a creative pursuit that you had or a way you wanted to change society in some way and serve
Yeah.
clients. So it's always on the back burner. And so having to then also wrap your head around being responsible for yet another human being, especially if you're a mom, like
Yeah.
there's another human being I've got to manage, another human being I've got to tell what to do and how to do it. Then I've got to check their work and like all of those things. It's just easier to say, nah, I'm just not going to think about that right now, maybe later.
Yeah.
But that doesn't bode well for our ultimate goals. If those goals are, I'm going to serve as many people as possible and scale and make something that's
Yeah.
sustainable for me.
Yeah. Like long term, the benefits do not outweigh the trouble. And like, even I think to add to that, unfortunately, is like the actual process of hiring can be so stressful. Like, I just think I've seen it just very briefly. I've never actually had to go through this process myself, but you post a job online, and then you get flooded with like hundreds sometimes of applicants, and you have to go through each and every single one of those. And for an entrepreneur who already has 1,000,005 things to do in one day, like to sit and to find time to go through all of these applicants with the same level of consideration is like a nuclear time bomb to your daily schedule. So I'm like, where if you how would you advise somebody, like what is step one, and then what does that process look like?
Yeah, so step one, this is, I always am trying to find the best way to say this because I don't want to scare people. But the first thing that you have to do that has to be done is to create space. And I can just hear the crowd of people going, "What do you mean create space? The reason why I
Yeah.
need to hire somebody is because there's no space."
Yeah.
So the reality is that you have to learn a new skill in order to do this. Just like being completely transparent, this is a new skill that you're going to have to learn. You don't have intuition built up yet because you haven't done that activity. So while once you get your feet wet, once you understand the process, and you learn the tools, the AI, the higher flicks, like all of these things that exist to help make it faster, that will happen. But at first it is going to take more time. So what I always tell people is that whether it's for 6 months or a year, just pick a limited amount of time where instead of focusing on growing, instead of focusing on getting even more clients or having another revenue goal to hit, if you just focus for a moment on sustaining what you currently have,
Yeah.
a lot of things are going to fall off of your to-do list just naturally. And then from there, if you can even further really look at your day-to-day actions, like how many times am I transitioning activities in a day? How many times am I looking at my phone instead of focusing on the task at hand? Am I writing social media content I don't need to write? Like, really be honest with yourself about the activities that you're doing every day that are not bringing money in. Because there are going to be quite a few, especially if you're not someone who's used to doing that kind of auditing on yourself. And that will free up the little bit of time to be able to review applicants or do an interview, those sorts of things. So I know it sounds really, really scary to hear somebody say pause for a second, but if sustainability is your ultimate goal, if impact is your ultimate goal, this is kind of what's required. But it doesn't have to be scary. Like, I don't want to be like gloom
No,
and
I
doom
think
all the time.
I think it's a good call out. Like, I truly believe that if you are trying to scale, your like back end processes across the board have to be ready for that. Like, you can't onboard a buttload of new clients if your processes on the back end aren't ready to receive that. So I think it's totally a fair call out where it's like, if you're ready to hire somebody, I think the other thing is that you have to be ready to like set that person up for success. So like, if things are a mess in the and behind the scenes, and like you're expecting them to be able to solve all of those problems when like you don't have a decent organization system, so like you can't set them up to then be self-sufficient to say like, okay, here's where everything is, just like type that in, and find it yourself. Otherwise, like, you're causing more work for yourself because they're going to be messaging you or talking to you and be like, hey, where do I find this, or what do I do with this? So like, I think that's a totally fair point. And like, it might sound scary, but really when you think about it, it's like super necessary because A, you won't be setting up your new hire for success, and like B, to scale, which is why you're hiring in the first place, like you won't be able to manage that effectively when it happens.
Absolutely. And the kind of piggybacking off of that is most people that I talk to about this kind of thing, when I start talking about hiring, their eyes glaze over and they're like, well, I'm not ready for that. We're not doing that. Like, they kind of shut their ears off.
Mm.
But it's so important to have this in the back of your mind and start doing some of this way before you're ready. Like, you don't have to be ready to hire tomorrow. You don't have to have a budget for hiring a full-time team member tomorrow. If you feel burnt out right now, if you can tell like, okay, the next step for me is going to be hiring a VA or whomever, great. Just start a little bit at a time. Just taking inventory of like, well, that process is clunky, or start videoing yourself while you're doing repetitive processes. That's all you need to create an SOP nowadays. Anyways, is just a video of it.
Yeah.
And just start kind of playing with this, like playing with what could I stop doing, or how would it feel to let go of that task, or maybe I do track my time this week and then next week I'll do like look at it, and then just teeny tiny little steps so that it's not this massive chunk of time that you have to create. It can be done slowly over time for sure, but that's a really good way to like start to take action without feeling a ton of overwhelm, so that hopefully by the time you've kind of gone through all of those little things to prepare, then it'll be way easier for you to say like, oh, I actually am ready to hire tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and put that job posting up.
Yeah. So I guess in that case, then like, what are the tools that you use? Like, do you recommend just like straight posting on LinkedIn? Are we posting on like use a greenhouse? Are we like, how does somebody go about that?
Yes. Okay. Great question. So I think the majority of people listening to this are most likely going to be going to Upwork. So that is the most popular, like online remote freelancer website. So super easy to use. I highly recommend it because while it does charge a fee, you are paying that person through a really secure network through their platform. So there's a lot of like risk, and for someone hiring for first time, a lot of risk that you do not have to deal with because Upwork will deal with the risk on their end for that fee. So as far as like overwhelm and stress is concerned, I do that. Now, the only caveat that I would say is Upwork does have connects, and it requires connects in order to apply to those job postings. So if a applicant runs out of connects, then that means there is a fee that is now a barrier to entry.
Okay.
And there are ways to earn connects without having to pay money. But I say all that to say the only platform I would not use platforms where it is very transparently a pay-to-play situation, because you are then going to weed out applicants that could be really awesome fits for you simply because they're not able to spend money on applying. And that's not their ability to pay to apply has no bearing on whether or not they'd be a good fit for you.
Totally.
So that's something. There are tools like HireFlix, which I mentioned earlier, which is a software where someone can they basically do an interview with you, but it's just through video instead of getting on an actual call. So that's time you're not having to take up getting on a call with every single human being. Tools like Toggle, they have tests that you can give someone, for example. So if you want somebody to be your social media manager, for example, you could find I don't think they call it a test, but that's basically what it is, to see what kind of work that they would do in a real life scenario.
Nice.
Yeah, so you get that real world example of how would they perform in this role. So yeah, there's so many different things out there. You can ask ChatGPT to create a standard operating procedure from a video, like we mentioned.
Yeah.
There's so many tools.
Well, that's good, because then I'm thinking like, okay, so you post a job and then you get a bunch of applicants, and then like you can use all of these tools to sort of like filter through the initial batch and then only send over like the 6 or so potential people that like you really want to connect with and like talk to face to face. And I think this is kind of where like the like intuition plays a role. And I think this is kind of scary for those who have never hired before. Like, how do you interview a human? And like, I of course, you ask ChatGPT for some interview questions about like based on the job description of like who you're really trying to hire and who you need. But I think there's still like an element of a little bit of nervousness where you're like, am I going to make the right choice? And like, your gut will help you along the way. But I think for those maybe who haven't spent some time listening to themselves and like developing their intuition, there's like, how do you know that you're picking the right person?
Yes. Okay. I love this question because I want people to forget like their own hiring experiences, because I think that is how we've gotten in this cycle of like interviews are boring. I am getting applicants that aren't like, I know they're just using ChatGPT. I don't know if they're being honest or not. Like all of these questions, cover letters, nobody wants to write or read a cover letter. So I just say, please do not go about creating a hiring process that is what you experienced. I advocate for heavy use of videos. So one thing I tell people to do is have your applicants send in a 2-minute long video of their personal mission statement. And thank you. What that does is you can see their vibe right away.
Yeah.
You can get that intuitive hit of like, do I connect with just their personality like anybody else you would meet in real life? When you ask about their personal mission statement rather than like, why do you think you'd be a good fit for this role? You are really understanding their thought process. You're understanding their motivations. You're understanding how they're articulating themselves, whether or not their ultimate goals for themselves aligns with what you're needing from that role or not. Yeah. And so you're just really getting to know somebody, and by asking slightly different questions than your stereotypical, tell me about a time you handled conflict, or all of these boring questions that but we know that everybody's going to answer them perfectly, and that's not what we're asking for. So I think in the age of AI, when it takes like 2 days to learn a new skill on YouTube, the hard and fast skills are less important than those culture fit questions or personality fit questions, the mission, vision, value questions. Yeah. That's really where the time and energy should be spent.
100%. And especially if you're thinking about this person as like somebody that you're investing in, and like you want to see them succeed and you want to be a part of their growth journey, and like, especially if this is an early stage hire, like those people tend to be very valuable and important, and like they're part of the scaling and growth of the company, and inevitably they sort of end up as leaders themselves. And it's like, this is an important moment for you, and it's an exciting moment as an entrepreneur. You're like, shit, I'm expanding, like life is good. And I think truly like my favorite question to ask people that I'm interviewing is like, what are your hopes and dreams? Like, what are your goals in life? Like, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like, what does that look like? And I think that, to your point, like tells you a lot more about who they are rather than just like, their resume does. And like, that's, I think, how you can be able to start to see someone for who they are, and then decide whether or not that aligns with like your hopes and dreams and your goals, and like whether or not that aligns with the role itself,
Mm-hmm. And I think you can ask those questions. You don't have to wait for like a video or an interview too. I thought of this and wanted to clarify. You can ask these type of questions from the get-go, like right off the bat. And like if we're using Upwork as the example, so that as far as weeding out pretty quickly 100, let's say, applicants, if you ask an off-the-wall question that nobody else is asking, you're not going to get people responding the way that you want them to in mass. So I think that that's also a really good way to really quickly go through, people who would be a good fit or not. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point. I think this also kind of brings me to the place where you talked about this a little bit, but like, so many founders don't expect to become leaders. Like you said, it's not the reason that they went into this. They went into it because they wanted to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And like, as a result, you find yourself in a position of leadership where people are looking to you, not just for like, what do I do next? But it's interesting. Your boss becomes like a part of your life. And if you're lucky and you have a good one, it's super exciting because you have this amazing person who supports you and like cares about you and is your champion in the best way. And it's so fun to have a leader like that. And like, I don't know the formula to make that happen. And like, I've had experiences on both sides. And I probably just comes down to a level of like compassion and care and like who you are as a person. But like from a founder perspective, how do you balance that and like, make sure that you're making time and space for the person that you're trying to develop?
That's such a great question. I think that there's a lot there in your question. So I'm going to try to break it out. And if I don't answer something, let me know. But you had asked like the formula, like you don't think there's a specific formula for getting that right. I think that it comes down to trust, and that is so cheesy, but let me explain. I was on a call with someone the other day and I asked if you could change one thing in the next 6 months, what would it be? And they were just like straight up, I do not trust my team. I do not trust them. I feel like I have to manage them. I've told them what to do 15 times and they won't do it that way. And the number of times I've heard that is shocking because you think as an employee, I'm doing the best that I can do. So there's this huge gap in whatever's happening in everybody's brains between like, I feel like I'm doing my best. I feel like I'm showing up the most I can based on the circumstances, but they still don't trust me. They still don't think I can do a good job.
Well, and you're also like, you hired me. So like inherently, I assume that means that you trust me to do the job.
So that is what I think most people are doing wrong. I think that most people, when they hire, they have the person start the job with the attitude of, now prove to me that you have earned this gift I have given you is almost the attitude. And I don't think it's nefarious. I don't think people are just out here with bad attitudes on purpose, but that really does create that really stressful power dynamic of, and it's the energy that we feel, right? When we talk to our boss, if they're not showing up, like you said, with compassion and understanding, they're showing up from a place of, I'm going to keep a mental note of every single thing you don't do the way that I would have done it. It's setting everybody up for failure and frustration. And so I think that whatever hiring process, whether you follow my advice or yours or whomever's, that whatever hiring process you do create, you end up with someone, when you hire them, you trust them from day one. And then it's just that benefit of the doubt moving forward. And then if trust is degraded over time, obviously you address that, and there are systems like to be able to address that. But going in with, I am hiring you because I need help. I am not hiring you because I am a fortune teller and know exactly what this business needs, and you have to do things this very specific way or else we're all going to fail. That's not no, go into it with, I need help. I can't do all this by myself. I am humbly asking you to fill a gap that I cannot fill. And with that attitude and the understanding that you don't have to know it all as the leader. You
Yeah.
don't have to know where you're going to be 10 years from now. It's okay to build this together with other people. I think that insecurity is also kind of a culprit to a lot of this as well.
Yeah,
So
I think that checks out. That makes a lot of sense. I think like you're right. The biggest issue probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume it's that relinquishing of control that a lot of people struggle with, which is totally fair. Like you built this thing yourself from the ground up and it was super hard and it's like a lot of work and you're afraid that somebody may ruin that, but like I think your advice is really sound. It's like you have to come down a level and recognize that you need help, and that's all you're asking for is some help. It's not this huge like elephant in the room where it's like, oh no, if I don't make the right choice, like it's going to fail. Like I've seen so many companies simply hire somebody, realize that they're not the right fit, and then just like let them go. Like it is what it is and it's okay, and then you can just try to find somebody else and like it'll happen. But like when you do find somebody that you can trust and you can start to relinquish some of that burden, and like I think also that to your point, the ongoing communication with that, right? Like you it's a daily process. It's like anything else, like developing trust with any other human being in your life. It's a communication thing where like over time you develop this great relationship where it's built on a layer of, demonstrated trust. But to your point, that's such a great moment to say like you hired them and like now you have to let them do their job.
yeah, that's so hard. If I can give an example, so I
Yeah.
had a client named Carol, and she knew when we started working together, she was like, I am having trouble giving this over to other people. And it was everything from like project management to marketing materials.
Yeah.
Because of exactly what you just said, she was really scared. She said, they're going to ruin all of the systems that I have built out and worked so hard to create. So it was her baby. Her business was her baby. And that's controversial. I won't get into that. But she and I talked during a one-on-one call, and what we really honed in on that I think is a good question that anybody can take away is, what would you need from another person in order to feel confident that they could produce the work that you had in your mind? Because I don't think most of us sit with like, what would it actually look, sound, smell, taste, feel like when I approve of what they have done? Like, what would that interaction be? What would that submission be like? What would the time frame look like? Because without that answer, you're not going to be able to delegate. You're not going to be able to set expectations. And so then everybody is going to be mismatched. And then the trust is going to degrade because you haven't articulated yourself well. So she and I were able to sit down and do that. She was like, she had an aha moment. She was like, oh my God, I think I understand what my expectations are. We had kind of a come to Jesus, for lack of a better term. And she was like, my expectations are really high, aren't they? I'm like, yeah. And she ended up delegating a ton and opened up a ton of time for her and her son to be able to do his homework with him. And like, it was actually crazy how just that simple question can kind of open up your aperture to see like where you're still holding on to things. So it's just little tweaks like that, like you said, on a day-to-day basis that can shift things.
Yeah, but like who, that's a crazy moment where I don't imagine a lot of people are self-aware enough to sit back and ask themselves that kind of a question. Like, you know what I mean? I guess that's why you're there.
I hope so. Yeah, that would be great if I could be some in any way associated with somebody feeling like they can be a little bit more self-aware. That would be awesome.
Yeah, because that question I think is one that's like how I guess it, but then again, to me, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be incredibly self-aware because you are like constantly being pushed to your limit, and you have to keep your cool because you have responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And to do that, you have to continuously be like looking inward and being like, where am I a bottleneck here? Where am I causing friction that if I were to just like take a hard look in the mirror, I could alleviate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do think because of what we were saying earlier, this is the area. If there is an area that gets overlooked, I think it's this area. Because I guarantee everyone in your audience is an extremely kind-hearted, empathetic person.
Yeah.
And we would never assume that because we have good intentions, we would never assume that we would be the ones to call, or maybe we would assume, but like it would be a big jump to think that I or they would end up being a bad boss or someone who would create a toxic workplace, or no, you were not going to find me doing that, right? Because
No.
I'm a self-aware person, right? But that what it's like, trust in yourself, yes, but that belief, I guess, that just your intention in this area is sufficient enough to really cover the whole gamut, I think is a misnomer. You can have really great intentions and still just not have a few key skills that can unintentionally create drama where there doesn't need to be. And I don't mean like internal that was probably a bad word, but like I mean like stress drama or anxiety drama.
Yeah. So like for somebody, then to make sure that they're on the right path, or like, is it just a humility thing, do you think? That it's just like you have to sort of come from the perspective that like you don't know everything and you're just here to learn as much as you possibly can, and hopefully that will lead you to make the like next right choice?
Yeah, I think so. And I at the risk of sounding cheesy again, I really do think being crystal clear on what the purpose of your business is in this moment. Like maybe you started your business for one reason, but in this moment right now, is it simply financial freedom for me and my family? If that's the case, you might not need to hire and you can be a solopreneur, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
If the intention of your business is to serve as many people as possible, there's only so much of that you're going to be able to do on your own. And so just having that mission in mind and understanding that the impact that you make is not just through your clients, but I argue that the most impact you could actually create, the biggest butterfly effect you have the potential to have, is through team building, because your team member is going home to their children, their husbands, their friends, their family, and if they have had a really terrible work experience that day, that's going to impact all of those other people. But think about how amazing it is when a mom comes home and they feel lit up. They know that their purpose was served that day. They know that they are creatively fulfilled. They are collaborating with people. The butterfly effect with team building is so huge. So I think it's just a reframe on what our expectations are of ourselves and what the point of building the team is, what the point of our business is, and really staying crystal clear on that and not letting ourselves get distracted with like shiny object syndrome.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I couldn't have found a better way to close the episode. That was so great. Oh my gosh. I think that is such a critical point, and like also hits on the inspiration for me in the most fabulous ways. So Emily, thank you so much. Like this has been such a fun conversation for me, and I hope it's helpful to everybody listening, because for me, it answered a lot of questions that I had. So I'm hoping that it was the same for everybody else. But thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's super fun. It's my favorite.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you found yourself nodding along, or if you got a good idea, or now you're feeling ready to hire, hit that 5-star button. You can find all the links to connect with Emily in the show notes, including a free customizable resource that she gave you about the sort of next immediate step if you guys are feeling ready to hire. So I highly recommend checking that out. And if you want more founder wisdom, community, and behind the scenes, come hang out at mimir.ink and join the newsletter. Between now and then, I will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.